I, 25 feuds, have never had a good relationship with my family. Growing up on a farm in Missouri, my family consisted of my parents, my older sister, 30 feuds, and my grandmother. Of all these people, the only one I had a somewhat normal relationship with was my sister, though we weren't particularly close. She just didn't come after me as much as everyone else did. The main reason I didn't fit in with my family was my appearance. I was born with a condition called vitiligo, which causes patches of skin to lose their pigment. Everyone else in my family, they're the epitome of the beauty standard, tall, blonde, and beautiful. Not me, though. According to them, I was the ugly duckling of the family, and they never let me forget it for even a second. My face had a huge patch of discoloration, and my family loved to make fun of me for it. They'd compare me to the cows on our farm, telling me that God must have made a mistake and made me human instead of a cow. Can you imagine what kind of toll that takes on a young child? I became incredibly self-conscious about my looks. As if getting bullied by kids at school wasn't bad enough, I had to face that kind of thing at home as well. When I started getting older and tried to stand up for myself, they'd tell me they were just joking and that I shouldn't be so sensitive about everything. Those snide remarks disguised as jokes continued for a really long time, and it always hurt me deeply. I was incredibly relieved when I got to leave for college because I would finally be on my own. I chose a college that was the farthest from my home, so I wouldn't be expected to come back often and would only return for the holidays. In college, I was the happiest version of myself because people were a lot more open-minded there. I decided that once I graduated, there was no way I would be going back home at any cost. Another reason I didn't want to go back home was that I had finally found the love of my life in college. That's the guy I'm getting married to now. We became friends in our first year and started dating towards the end of our second year. Since then, we've stayed together, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. While my family made me feel like I was the ugliest person on earth, he made me feel exactly the opposite. When I went back home for my sister's wedding in my final year of college, I was going to tell them about him so I could introduce him when I came back for the holidays that year. But something they said at the wedding made me feel so awful that I decided that after I graduated from college, I would not like to keep in touch with them anymore. On the day of the wedding, one of my uncles was kind of teasing me about how it was my turn next, and if I had somebody in mind, then it was the right time for me to come up and say it to my parents. He was just messing around with me, but my grandmother made a remark that cut deep. She said, "That's very unlikely. With that face, she'll never find anyone," and my parents were the first people to agree. Then they started laughing as if it was the funniest thing. Everyone got awkward and didn't really say anything, but that comment really hurt me. Even though they had made comments like that several times before, I don't know why, but that particular incident hurt me like never before. I made up my mind that they didn't deserve to be part of my life. A couple of months after my sister's wedding, I graduated. As a formality, I invited my parents to the graduation ceremony. They attended, and we were cordial with each other. I even introduced them to my boyfriend, and they didn't even bother to hide their shock that somebody as normal as him was willing to be with me. By then, I had told him all about my family and how cruel they were, so he didn't interact much with them either. After the graduation ceremony, I thanked my parents for paying for everything through college and told them that as soon as I could afford it, I would pay them back. I also told them that I had decided to stay in the city and wouldn't be going back to the farm with them. That seemed to tick them off a bit, but I said that I liked the city life more, and they left after a really cold goodbye. Since then, a couple of years have passed, and we haven't really had any proper contact. They wish me on my birthdays and on the holidays, since I don't go back home anymore, and I wish them back, but that's about it. And I'm really happy with this arrangement, because after the way they have treated me my entire life, I think this is for the best. After graduation, my boyfriend and I moved in together. His parents were kind enough to cover our rent until both of us were able to find stable jobs. Because I wasn't going back home, I was able to focus on building my career and my relationship without the constant negativity from my family. A couple of months ago, at the beginning of this year, he proposed to me, and I accepted. It was about time since we have been together for ages now. Recently, the invitations were sent out. My sister and her husband received one, but I did not invite my parents or my grandmother. I think the reasons for that are pretty obvious. I don't even speak to them much, and they're not the kind of people that I would want around me on such a special day. I honestly didn't think that my family would be shocked that they weren't invited, but they were. As soon as they realized that they hadn't received an invitation, my mother called me up to tell me how unfair and insulting this was. My sister had received her invitation a week ago, and 3 days back, my mother called me up to tell me that my family was still waiting for their invitation to my wedding. She said that she had been able to overlook the fact that they hadn't been invited to my engagement party, but the wedding was a big deal, and she expected me to be a bit more punctual with the invites. At which point, I told her that she didn't receive the invitations because I had no intention of having them at my wedding at all. Then she started yelling at me about how I was an ungrateful child who had first snubbed the opportunity to inherit the farm and respect the family business that had given me everything I wanted, and now I was acting like I was too good for them just because they were simple farm folk. That was pretty ridiculous, so I clarified that the real reason I didn't want them at my wedding was because of the comments they had made about me and my appearance my entire life. She tried to say that they were just jokes, and it was petty of me to take them to heart, but I told her that that's just how it was, and I didn't want them in my life. Then I hung up and blocked her, and for good measure, I blocked my dad as well. It was very satisfying for me because I had wanted to do that for a really long time, and I finally had an excuse to go no contact with them permanently without feeling guilty about it later. But within 2 hours of that, my sister called me up and told me that she was willing to cover the cost of everything, right from flying our family down here to the cost of accommodation and even having them at the wedding. But all she wanted me to do was just extend an invitation to them and apologize for what I had said about not wanting them in my life. I thought it was weird that she was taking their side because she usually stays out of the family drama, and I found it offensive because I had invited her and her husband, so I couldn't understand why she was trying to get me to invite our family as well. I told her that she was free not to attend if she felt strongly about this, but I was not extending any invitation to our family. Then she told me this wasn't about her or how she felt, but there was something that I didn't know and our family hadn't told me or anybody else about because they didn't want me to worry while I was in another state. But my mom had actually been diagnosed with stage 2 lung cancer a couple of weeks ago, and apparently, it was her last wish to see her daughter getting married. They had apparently kept this a secret, because not only was I in another state, but I was also getting married in a couple of weeks, so they did not want to put a damper on the celebration by sharing this somber news. Apparently, my family didn't know that my sister was telling me about this, but she was just really desperate for me to invite our family and make amends with them, because this was my mother's last wish, and she told me that I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't invite them and at least try to fix my relationship with my mother before something happened. That news changed everything, because now I felt like I would be the bad guy forever if I didn't make amends with my dying mother. I mean, how do you hold a grudge against somebody who has been diagnosed with cancer? It's really difficult, especially when that person is your own mother. So I was a total mess after that phone call with my sister, and had no idea what to do until I called my fiancé and told him all about it. He was the one who suggested that they might be lying for sympathy. Until then, I had been so emotional that I hadn't even considered that possibility, but after he brought it up, I decided to think about it. I didn't know who to talk to at that point, because my sister had made it very clear to me that nobody else apart from her, my father, and my grandmother knew about the diagnosis. So I decided to contact my aunt, my mother's youngest sister, who had helped me settle in when I first moved here. I knew that she was nothing like my mom and grandma, and I'm pretty sure that even if I did talk to her about this, in case the diagnosis was real, my mother would have no reason to mind it because that was her own sister after all, and they were pretty close. She and I have always had a moderately good relationship, so when I told her about what my sister had said, she told me that she had been considering bringing this up with me, but was having second thoughts. But since I myself had called to talk to her about it, she had decided that she couldn't lie to me and was not going to cover for my mother. She told me that apparently, when my sister received an invitation, but they didn't, my parents and my grandmother had been really offended. Then they had contacted her to find out if she had received an invitation as well, and when they discovered that she had, there was no stopping them. My mother had apparently been telling everyone that the reason that I had snubbed my parents was that I didn't think that they were worthy of being invited, since they were simple farm folk. Once again, that was not true. My mother had confided to my aunt that she was not going to let this go unanswered, and was going to call me up and confront me about it, and had told her that apparently, if I still refused to respect their right to attend my wedding, then that's what they would just tell me, that my mother was sick, and knowing the emotional fool that I am, I would forgive them instantly and invite them to the wedding along with an apology. Once they were at my wedding, they would make sure that I never forgot that day, and it sounded quite ominous. So my aunt had wanted to discuss it with me, but didn't know if it was her place to say something. She then apologized to me for not bringing it up with me earlier, and I forgave her because, after all, I never would have found out about any of this if she hadn't spilled the beans. After she told me the truth, I called my fiancé back to let him know that he had been right. My mother had been lying so they could weasel their way into receiving an invitation out of sympathy, and then they planned on attending my wedding and ruining it for me. Both of us were pretty pissed off, and we decided to make a post on social media regarding this, since I had learned that they had also been going around telling people that I was not inviting them since they were farm folk, and I thought I was too good for them. So we put out the truth, and after that, I blocked my sister as well, since she had clearly been part of this whole mess and had picked which side she wanted to be on. I also texted her to let her know that I was rescinding her invitation, and I did not want her at my wedding either. Once that was all done, my fiancé and I finally felt a bit better about the situation, but after I put up my post, I received a message from my grandmother's phone number, whom I had forgotten to block. It was clearly my mother, and she had sent a text saying that it didn't matter what I posted on social media, she was still going to make sure that I did not get to go through with the wedding, because she was never going to allow any of this to happen without her blessing. She said that I would never be happy with my fiancé without the blessing of my family, and I still had the chance to fix things with her. That made me so angry that I responded to her and told her that I really wish that she actually had been diagnosed with cancer, because then I might have found her a bit easier to tolerate, because I knew that I wouldn't have to put up with her for much longer. Then I blocked that number as well, but unfortunately, I realized that I shouldn't have responded to her at all, because she took a screenshot of that message from me and put it up on her social media accounts. And now half the family thinks that I took it too far, while the other half thinks that my parents are sick in the head. I kind of feel bad about that comment, though, because I don't want to be the kind of person who says things like that, but I feel like I had been pushed to the limit that day. So, Ida, for saying that I wish my mother had truly been diagnosed with lung cancer. Update 1. Thank you all so much for taking the time to comment on my post. It's been 4 days, and my family is still blocked. I'm not going to apologize to them for anything. My fiancé and I had a lengthy discussion about this, and we realized that I was stressing way too much about what my family thought of me. If certain people were with my parents on this matter, that was their prerogative altogether. If they wished not to attend my wedding because they wanted to support my parents, I couldn't change their minds, and I really didn't want to anymore. So after discussing it with each other, we decided to put out a statement saying that at this point, we were really done with this entire fiasco. We wrote, "If people want to attend our wedding, they are free to do so. If they don't, they really don't have to. Most people in our family have always known that my parents and my grandmother have been nothing short of cruel to me all my life and have always made fun of my appearance, knowing that I have a medical condition and cannot do anything about it. They have always made me feel ugly and small. And since they can't tolerate the fact that I'm not trying to get along with them anymore, they don't respect me either." It felt good to say it out loud, because I was getting sick of people in my family thinking that they could just text me that I had taken things too far, and thinking that that would make me apologize to my parents. They had never bothered to think about what I had been going through all these years. My parents, the people who were supposed to protect me from the world, ended up being the people who made me feel worse about myself. They had never supported me during childhood and told my parents that they were wrong for the things that they said. So how was it that my saying something cruel to my mother out of anger as retaliation was any worse than what they were doing? At least I had been provoked. That could be my excuse. But I was a child when my parents used to say such horrible things to me. What was their excuse? After we put out that statement, we stopped receiving messages from relatives telling me that I had taken things too far. The ones who were on my side had been kind enough to reach out to me to tell me that I was not alone and they were with me. These were the people who had at least bothered to take a stand for me in the past against my parents, so I was grateful for that. As for the rest of my family members who are with my parents, they can go take a hike. I really don't care about them anymore. But this whole situation has made me reflect on some deeper issues. It's not just about the wedding anymore. It's about years of emotional abuse and the long-lasting effects it has had on my self-esteem and mental health. I've started to realize that maybe I need to seek professional help to deal with all of this. My fiancé has been incredibly supportive through all of this. He suggested that we both go to couples counseling to make sure that we're on the same page about how to deal with family issues in the future. I think it's a great idea, and we've already scheduled our first session for next week. I've also been thinking a lot about the concept of family. Just because we're related by blood, does that mean we have to tolerate abuse? I don't think so. I've come to the conclusion that family is what you make it. The friends who have supported me through this, my fiancé and his family, they're my real family now. Speaking of his family, they've been absolutely wonderful. When they heard about what was happening, they immediately offered their support. My future mother-in-law even called me and said, "Sweetheart, we're your family now, and we love you just the way you are." I broke down crying when she said that. It's the kind of unconditional love and acceptance I've always craved from my own parents. But it's not all positive. This situation has brought up a lot of painful memories and emotions. I've been having trouble sleeping, and when I do sleep, I often have nightmares about my childhood. My fiancé has been great, holding me when I wake up in a cold sweat, but I know this isn't sustainable. That's another reason why I think therapy is necessary. I've also been dealing with a lot of guilt. Not about not inviting my family to the wedding. I stand by that decision. But guilt about the cancer comment. Even though my mother was manipulating me, wishing cancer on someone is a terrible thing to do. I'm not that person, and I don't want to become someone who lashes out like that, no matter how provoked I am. On a more positive note, planning the wedding has been a welcome distraction. My fiancé and I have been focusing on making it a celebration of love and new beginnings. We've decided to have a small, intimate ceremony with just our closest friends and his family. It feels right, and for the first time in a while, I'm genuinely excited about the wedding. We've also decided to use this opportunity to raise awareness about vitiligo. We're asking guests to make donations to a vitiligo research foundation in lieu of gifts. It feels good to turn this negative situation into something positive that might help others who are dealing with the same condition. One unexpected outcome of this whole situation is that I've reconnected with some distant relatives who reached out after seeing my social media post. They shared their own stories of dealing with our family's toxic behavior, and it's been comforting to know that I'm not alone in my experiences. As for my sister, I'm still hurt by her actions, but I'm starting to wonder if she might be a victim in all of this too. Growing up in that environment couldn't have been easy for her either, even if she didn't face the same level of ridicule that I did. I'm not ready to forgive her yet, but I'm open to the possibility of having a conversation with her in the future. Looking ahead, I know that the road to healing is going to be long and difficult. There will probably be more challenges to face, especially as the wedding day gets closer. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm standing up for myself and setting healthy boundaries. I'm learning that it's okay to prioritize my own mental health and happiness, even if that means cutting toxic people out of my life. It's a painful process, but I believe it's necessary for my growth and well-being. To those who might be in a similar situation, I want to say this: you are worthy of love and respect, regardless of what your family might have told you. It's okay to distance yourself from people who hurt you, even if they're family. And it's okay to create your own family with people who truly love and support you. As I move forward, I'm focusing on the positive relationships in my life and the future I'm building with my fiancé. I'm nervous about what the future holds, but I'm also excited. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm in control of my own story. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It's meant more to me than you could ever know. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but for now, I'm going to focus on healing and preparing for my new life. Update 2. Hi everyone, I'm back with another update. We're just a week away from the wedding now, and things have taken an unexpected turn. This morning, my aunt showed up at my house to tell us that my parents are here with my grandma. I wasn't prepared for this at all. My aunt told me that my mother still had no idea who had revealed their plan to me. She trusts my aunt implicitly, so she thinks I must have guessed their plan, which is honestly pretty stupid. Anyway, they contacted my aunt to tell her that they had landed last night and were staying in a hotel near my house. Apparently, they planned on confronting me on the day of the wedding, right before the ceremony. I don't know how they're expecting to be able to do that, because I'm getting married in a hotel, which is not even close to my house. And even if they do come along, they're not going to get any rooms to stay in that hotel since it's been booked up for ages. More importantly, there's going to be security there. I don't know how they're planning to pull this off. I thanked my aunt for letting me know, but I found it a bit strange that she had come all the way to my house to tell me something that she could have just shared with me on the phone. When I asked her about it, she started looking really uneasy and said that the reason she had come was because last night my mother put her on the phone with my grandma, and they kind of cornered her. They started taunting her about how, in spite of having a daughter who lives here, my grandmother is still having to be put up in a hotel instead of being invited to stay at her daughter's house. My aunt told me that she had really tried to avoid it, but apparently they had really pushed her into letting them stay with her instead. Now they were at her houses, so she was kind of skeptical about texting me or calling me to let me know what was going on. That's why she had chosen to visit me, and she apologized to me profusely. She just said that she was finding it very difficult to go against her mother and her sister, and she really wanted to be on the right side of things, but they were making it really difficult for her to say no. I personally think that it was pretty weak of my aunt to give in so easily, but I told her that it was fine that they were staying with her and not in a hotel like they intended, since now I could just go to her house with her and confront them about what they were planning to do. In a hotel, it might have been a slightly more complicated situation because of security and stuff. My aunt did not want me to do that, but I convinced her. Now my fiance and I are heading over to her place. I'm feeling a mix of emotions right now: anger, anxiety, and a strange sense of determination. Part of me is scared about confronting them, but another part of me feels like this is something I need to do to finally close this chapter of my life. My fiance is worried about me. He thinks this confrontation might be too stressful so close to our wedding day. But I feel like if I don't do this now, they'll find a way to ruin our special day. I need to make it clear to them, once and for all, that they are not welcome in my life anymore. As we're driving to my aunt's house, I can't help but think about all the times they've hurt me in the past. The cruel jokes, the constant put-downs, the way they made me feel like I was worth less because of my appearance. It's like a montage of painful memories playing in my mind. But then I look at my fiance, driving beside me, his face set in a determined expression, and I'm reminded of how far I've come. I have someone who loves me for who I am, who stands by me no matter what. I have friends who support me, and I'm building a life that I'm proud of. I take a deep breath and try to calm my racing heart. This confrontation isn't going to be easy, but I know it's necessary. I need to stand up for myself, to show them that their words and actions can't hurt me anymore. As we pull up to my aunt's house, I see my parents' car in the driveway. It's the same car they've had since I was a kid, and seeing it brings back a flood of memories, not all of them bad, which makes this situation even more complicated. My fiance squeezes my hand. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asks. I nod. I need to. For us, for our future. I need to end this once and for all. We get out of the car and walk up to the front door. I can hear voices inside, my mother's shrill tone, my grandmother's gravelly voice, my father's deep rumble. For a moment, I'm that scared little girl again, dreading another family gathering where I'll be the butt of every joke. But I'm not that girl anymore. I'm stronger now. I have people who love me, who see my worth. I have a future to look forward to, a life I've built for myself, and I'm not going to let them take that away from me. I raise my hand and knock on the door. This is it, the moment of truth. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, I know it's going to change everything. But I'm ready. I'm ready to face my past, so I can finally, truly embrace my future. As we wait for someone to answer the door, I feel a sense of calm wash over me. No matter what happens, I know I'm doing the right thing. I'm standing up for myself, setting boundaries, and protecting my happiness. And really, isn't that what growing up is all about? The door opens, and I see my aunt's worried face. Behind her, I can see my parents and grandmother, their expressions a mix of shock and anger at seeing me here. But I'm not backing down. Not this time. I take a deep breath and step inside. It's time to face my demons and come out stronger on the other side. Update 3. Hi everyone, I'm back with what will probably be my final update on this situation. It's been a whirlwind of a week, and I have so much to share. First, let me tell you about what happened at my aunt's house. We just came back from there about an hour ago. We had a pretty big showdown with my parents and my grandmother, but I don't feel bad about it in the slightest. In fact, I feel really relieved because I think I have finally managed to shake them off, and they probably won't be bothering me anytime soon. As soon as I showed up at the houses with my aunt, my mother started looking really shocked to see me. Then she came to the realization that it must have been my aunt who had spilled the beans about their plan to me earlier. And then my grandmother and my mom started yelling at my aunt about how she had betrayed them. But I nipped it in the bud, because this was supposed to be about my relationship with them, and I wasn't going to let them distract me. So I told them as politely as I could that I had made it very clear that I did not want them at my wedding, and neither did I want anything to do with them in the future. If they couldn't take the hint, I could definitely call the cops on my wedding day, and they could give them a clear picture of what I wanted to do with them, which was nothing. My parents got mad because apparently I had no right to threaten them after everything that they had done for me. So I told them that whatever they had done for me, it had been because they had chosen to have me, and it was not like they were doing me a favor by raising me. I also reminded them that they had only ever done the bare minimum. They have never been affectionate or loving to me, and that's what a kid definitely needs when they're growing up. I got a bit emotional while telling them that they had made me feel like crap about myself for my entire childhood, and when I was finally happy as a grown-up, they couldn't stand it and wanted to ruin it for me. I called them selfish and said that I was really glad that they had decided to show up here so I could finally say all these things to their face, because maybe then my words would finally make sense to them. After my emotional outburst, I stormed out of the house without even waiting for a response and got into the car. My fiancé and I drove back home in silence, and once we were back, he comforted me as I cried so that I could get it all out of my system. I felt much better about this situation now. My aunt texted me to tell me that after I left, my mother and my grandmother turned on her for a bit, but she finally stood up to them and asked them to leave. So they packed up their stuff and left within half an hour, and she doesn't know if they're going to stay in a hotel now or if they're just going to go back home, but she's just glad that they're out of our hair. Now, fast forward to today, my wedding day. I got married last week, and it was absolutely surreal. After the last update, I had no interaction with my parents, and I hadn't even kept in touch with anybody who was still speaking to them. So I felt very lost since I had no idea what they were up to. I was afraid that they were planning to do something on the day of my wedding, since I was pretty sure that because I had invited my sister initially, she must have told them all about the wedding venue and stuff. But thankfully, none of my worst fears materialized, and I was able to get married without a hitch. The ceremony was beautiful, intimate, and everything I had ever dreamed of. My fiancé, now husband, looked at me like I was the most beautiful person in the world, vitiligo and all. For the first time in my life, I truly felt beautiful and loved. I had posted some photos on social media, and surprisingly, my sister actually reached out to me. She told me that she was really sorry for playing along with my parents, and said that she realized it was really wrong of her. I had blocked her phone number, so she reached out to me on social media since she could still contact me there. She told me that she was really happy for me and congratulated me on the wedding. I thanked her. We left it at that, because I have not completely forgiven her, but at least she had the good sense to apologize. Maybe someday I will forgive her, and maybe we might reconcile, but that's going to take a long time, because now I just want to enjoy my new life with my husband. Some people that I will definitely never be reconciling with, though, are my parents. Even though they did not pull off anything at the wedding, which I'm really thankful for, they reached out to me a couple of days back to let me know that they will be cutting me out of their life permanently and legally. So they were just disowning me, and after they're gone, I will not be inheriting anything. I'm fine with that, to be honest. I actually never expected them to include me in their will in the first place, and even if they had, I would think that they would leave me something completely pointless or useless, because everything good was obviously going to go to my sister. They wrote an email to me, and after reading that, I just deleted it and moved on with my life because I really don't care. I'm going to leave for my honeymoon in a couple of days, and I'm just going to have fun now. This whole experience has been a roller coaster of emotions, but I feel like I've come out stronger on the other side. I've learned that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about the people who love and support you unconditionally. My husband's family has been incredible throughout this whole ordeal. They've welcomed me with open arms and shown me what a loving family should be like. My friends have been my rock, standing by me and supporting me every step of the way. And most importantly, my husband has been my biggest cheerleader, loving me for who I am and helping me see my own worth. As I look towards the future, I feel a sense of peace that I've never experienced before. Yes, there's still some pain and some healing to be done, but I'm no longer carrying the weight of my family's expectations and criticisms. I'm free to be myself, to love myself, and to build the life I want. To anyone out there who might be going through something similar, I want you to know that it gets better. It's not easy, and it hurts like hell, but you are strong enough to get through it. You deserve love, respect, and happiness, and sometimes that means making difficult decisions and cutting toxic people out of your life, even if they're family. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your kind words and advice have meant more to me than you could ever know. As I start this new chapter of my life, I'm filled with hope and excitement for what the future holds. I'm no longer the ugly duckling. I'm a strong, beautiful swan, ready to spread my wings and fly.